The envelope didn't belong on the table. It sat there anyway, wedged between a basket of warm bread and my untouched glass of water, too deliberate to be accidental, too heavy to be ignored. My mother's handwriting covered the front, neat and precise, the way it always was when she wanted to appear calm while delivering something final. She'd written my name carefully. Beneath it, 3 words followed, smaller but intentional. For your future. My father sat stiffly beside her, adjusting his jacket for the 3rd time, eyes locked straight ahead like he was bracing for a collision. Across from me, my sister angled her phone just enough to look casual, though I could tell she was recording. They were all waiting for something. Shock, tears, gratitude, maybe even relief. They still believed I was predictable. 3 years, that's how long I'd been sending money. Quiet transfers every month without fail. Sometimes extra when they said things were tight. $47,000 in total. I knew the number because I tracked it, meticulously, privately, never mentioned aloud. I told myself it was loyalty. I told myself this was what dependable daughters did. They thought I was still her. But that version of me stopped existing the day my daughter was born, the moment I learned the difference between being someone's safety net and being their backup plan. My mother cleared her throat, folding her hands together. "You should open it," she said gently, like she was offering a gift. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled out a single sheet of paper. No letter, no warmth, just a formal document, typed, signed, and impersonal. They were cutting me off. Disowned, removed from family decisions, excluded from future gatherings, and at the bottom, a final line that wasn't a boundary, it was a warning. Contact with your child will be reconsidered if necessary. I didn't look up right away. I let the silence stretch long enough to make them uncomfortable, let them wonder if it worked. My sister shifted in her seat. "Well," she asked, "aren't you going to say anything?" I folded the paper slowly and slid it back into the envelope. Then I smiled. "That's it?" I asked. "After everything?" My mother leaned forward. "We've done what's best," she said. "You'll understand one day." I already did. What they didn't know was that 10 minutes earlier in the parking lot, my mother had leaned close and whispered something she believed would keep me obedient forever. She was wrong. As I pushed my chair back and stood, I realized this dinner wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. Rehook. They thought the envelope would break me, but they had no idea what I'd already decided to take away from them. I was raised to be the dependable one, the child who didn't complain, the one who learned early how to make herself smaller so other people could feel secure. While my sister tested boundaries, I reinforced them. While she was protected, I learned how to protect myself, and then everyone else. Responsibility followed me like a shadow. When I moved out, I paid my own bills without being asked. When I worked late nights, no one worried. Independence was praised until it stopped benefiting them. Then it quietly turned into expectation. The first transfer happened after my father called one evening, voice low and careful. "Things are a bit tight right now," he said, "just for this month." It was a small amount, easy to justify. Family helps family. The next month, it happened again and again. Soon the requests stopped sounding like requests at all. Money became part of the routine, automatic, assumed, unquestioned. If I hesitated, the disappointment was immediate. If I asked questions, I was reminded how much they'd sacrificed for me growing up. Then Brooke got engaged. That's when everything escalated. Suddenly there were deadlines, deposits, emergencies that couldn't wait. My mother took over communication, presenting every expense like a crisis wrapped in guilt. "You earn more," she'd say, "and you don't really need much. This is important for the family." I had a daughter, rent, childcare, a future I was actively trying to build. None of that seemed to count. Brooke never asked me directly. She didn't have to. She thanked me loudly in public and ignored me in private. Gratitude became performance. Expectation became entitlement. Still, I paid. What they didn't know was that I had started keeping records. Every transfer, every message, every late-night call that ended with, "I'll pay you back." Not because I planned to confront them, but because something in me needed proof that I wasn't imagining it. The moment everything shifted came 2 weeks before the engagement dinner. My mother called late. Her voice was sharp, impatient. "Brooke's overwhelmed. You need to be supportive." Supportive meant sending more money. It also meant agreeing not to attend the dinner unless I promised to behave. No questions, no boundaries, no reminders of reality. Then she lowered her voice. "If you make this difficult, you might lose access to your daughter. Think carefully." The line went quiet after that. So did something inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I sat in my car long after the call ended, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. And that's when I decided I would stop disappearing. I would go to the dinner, and I would let them finish what they started. They believed silence was my weakness, but they had no idea I was collecting every reason to finally speak.
The restaurant was chosen for appearances, not comfort. Low lighting, soft music, menus without prices. The kind of place meant to signal success to people who needed others to believe they'd made it. My parents arrived early, greeting relatives like hosts at a gala. Brooke looked flawless. Perfect hair, perfect smile, every movement practiced. She wore confidence the way some people wear armor. When I walked in, the atmosphere shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Smiles tightened, conversations paused half a second too long before resuming. I took my seat without comment, placing my phone beside my plate. The envelope was already there, waiting for me like a prop in a play I hadn't agreed to perform in. My mother slid it closer, her fingers lingering on the edge. "We didn't want to do this publicly," she said, loud enough for the table but quiet enough for the room. "But you've left us no choice." My father nodded, eyes still avoiding mine. Brooke stared straight ahead. They took turns explaining. Calm voices, polished language, how I'd become unpredictable, how my priorities had changed, how my attitude was disruptive. Words carefully chosen to sound reasonable. Not once did they mention the money. Not once did they acknowledge what I'd given, only what I'd supposedly taken. When they finished, they waited. I let the silence stretch. Then I nodded. "You're right," I said evenly. "This dynamic isn't healthy." Every head snapped up. I reached for my phone and turned the screen toward them. No drama, no raised voice, just facts. "I just want clarity before we move forward," I continued, "so there's no confusion." I tapped once. A list filled the screen. Dates, amounts, notes, 3 years of consistent payments, laid out cleanly, undeniable. The air at the table changed instantly. My father went pale. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. Brooke finally looked at me, real panic flickering across her face. "This ends tonight. No more money, no more emergencies, no more expectations disguised as love." My mother tried to speak. I raised my hand. "And threatening my child," I added quietly. That was the line. You don't get to cross it and pretend nothing happened. A nearby table went silent. Someone dropped a fork. Brooke stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're ruining everything," she snapped. "You're selfish." I met her gaze. "No," I said. "I just stopped paying for it." I placed cash on the table, my portion only, then stood. No one followed. No one stopped me. As I walked out, I didn't feel empowered or triumphant. I felt finished. And behind me, I could sense it. the moment their story began collapsing without me holding it up. Rehook. I thought walking away would be the hardest part, but I had no idea what silence was about to cost them. The first call came before sunrise. I let it ring, then another, and another. By the time my daughter finished breakfast, my phone had lit up with missed calls, voicemails, and messages layered with panic and accusation. The tone shifted quickly from confusion to outrage to something dangerously close to fear. My mother cried first, soft, broken messages about misunderstandings and stress, how everything had gotten out of hand. My father followed with clipped demands, asking when I planned to fix what I'd started. Brooke's messages were sharper, long paragraphs accusing me of humiliation, betrayal, and selfishness. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them asked how I was. And when the money didn't arrive that week, the mask came off completely. Vendors started calling them, deadlines passed, deposits were suddenly non-refundable, stories changed depending on who they were talking to. I heard it all through extended family, half-truths and frantic explanations designed to make me sound unstable instead of unavailable. I didn't respond. Silence became my boundary. Instead of arguing, I met with a lawyer. I documented every message, every threat, every financial transfer. I asked questions I should have asked years earlier. I took steps to protect my daughter, changed routines, and locked down every point of access they'd ever assumed they had. Blocking their numbers felt less like anger and more like oxygen. The quiet unsettled them. A week passed, then 2. Relatives started calling, gently at first, then with thinly veiled pressure. "They're struggling," they'd say. "This has gone far enough." I thanked them for their concern and ended the call. A month later, the engagement was quietly postponed. No announcements, no explanations, just silence where celebration was supposed to be. Eventually, the word changed to canceled, spoken in whispers like a family secret no one wanted attached to their name. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. What I felt was relief. For the first time in years, my paycheck stayed where it belonged. My home felt calmer. My shoulders stopped carrying weight they were never meant to hold. My daughter slept through the night, unaware of the chaos that no longer circled her future. In me, I stopped explaining myself. I stopped apologizing for choosing peace. They believed cutting me off would leave me desperate and isolated. Instead, it left me free. What stayed with me was an anger. That surprised me the most. I expected resentment, grief, maybe even guilt, but what settled in instead was clarity, the kind that comes after a long storm finally passes and you realize how much noise you'd been living inside. Without their voices filling the space, I could hear my own thoughts again. Family, I learned, isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by safety, by knowing you don't have to earn your place at the table or pay to keep your seat. Love that requires silence isn't love, it's control dressed up as tradition. For a while, I replayed everything in my head, the transfers, the conversations, the moments I almost said no but didn't. Not because I wanted to punish myself, but because I needed to understand how easily responsibility can turn into erasure when no one expects you to stop giving. I still have the envelope. It sits in the back of a drawer now, folded and unimportant, not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I refused to surrender. I don't open it anymore. I don't need to. Its power disappeared the moment I stood up from that table. What they took from me, approval, belonging, access, was never truly mine to begin with. It was conditional, temporary, designed to disappear the moment I stopped being useful. What I gained cost me everything they valued, and what I lost freed me. My world became smaller, but stronger.
Fewer calls, fewer obligations, more peace. I built routines around my daughter instead of their expectations. I invested in stability instead of appeasement. I stopped preparing explanations for decisions I no longer needed to justify. If I ever sit at a table like that again, it won't be because I'm afraid of losing my place. It will be because I chose to be there. Because real family doesn't threaten your future to control your present. And strength isn't loud. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like walking away without asking to be understood. Final rehook, CTA. If you've ever been the one who carried everyone else, ask yourself this: what might finally grow if you set the weight down and walk forward anyway?
The quiet didn't last forever. At first, it felt fragile, like something I might accidentally break if I moved too fast. I filled it carefully. Mornings became slower. Evenings belonged to my daughter and me. No surprise calls, no financial emergencies disguised as loyalty tests, no explaining why my boundaries deserved to exist. For the first time, my choices didn't require approval. I changed things in small, deliberate ways. I switched banks, updated documents, built routines that didn't revolve around being needed by people who never planned to protect me. I learned what it felt like to make decisions based on what was healthy, not what was expected. And something unexpected happened. I stopped bracing for backlash. The fear that had followed me for years, fear of being labeled difficult, ungrateful, dramatic, began to fade. I realized how much power those labels had held over me simply because I believed them. Without their voices reinforcing the story, it lost its grip. There were moments of doubt, of course. Late at night, I wondered if they missed me, if they rewrote the story to make themselves the victims, if they ever acknowledged the cost of losing the one who always showed up. Then I reminded myself of the truth. People who miss you don't threaten your child. People who love you don't punish you for growing. And people who value you don't discard you the moment you stop being convenient. I didn't rebuild my life loudly. There was no announcement, no public closure, just consistency, stability, peace. My daughter learned what calm looks like, what safety feels like. She grew up watching boundaries instead of sacrifices, and that mattered more than any apology I never received. Sometimes I imagine them sitting at another table, another celebration, another carefully staged moment, still expecting someone else to carry the weight I once did. And for the first time, that thought doesn't hurt, because I'm not there anymore. I didn't lose a family that day. I outgrew a system that required my silence to survive. And if they ever tell the story of how I walked away, I hope they include the part where I finally walked toward myself. Final rehook, or CTA. If you're standing at the edge of a decision that feels terrifying because it might cost you everything, ask yourself this: what kind of life becomes possible when you stop paying to belong?